Hi there. We're continuing our progress through the Psalms, the Tehillim, in Hebrew, the praises, and we're in Psalm 89. In the Hebrew numbering system, the numeral letters, that's Pe Tet. Pe is 80 and Tet is the letter for 9. So this is a maskil of Ethan the Ezrahite. A maskil is an intelligently well put together poetic song. And Ethan the Ezrahite is obviously one of the musicians in Tabernacle, or ones who descended from them. So this is very much a song about covenant. Covenant is a major theme, and particularly the covenant with the house of David. Today we're just going to cover the first 13 verses 1 to 13, and it opens up with saying, I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. Now that word mercies is an important word because it's actually, we have translated it so often in English as mercies, but actually it really is the covenant obligation, the covenant grace of God that he's singing about. The Hasdei Adonai Olam Ashira, it says, the covenant, Hasdei, the mercies, the covenant obligations of God. And this is because there's been a covenant made, and when a covenant is made, the person who makes that covenant is held in this obligation called Hesed. And this Hesed is something which stretches all through the scriptures talking about covenant. And therefore he's saying, I will let generations know about how permanent is your Hesed, how unbreakable is your covenant grace. Because in verse 2 it says, because Hesed have been built up forever, and your faithfulness, emunah in Hebrew, emunah, your faithfulness has been established in the heaven itself, in the place where God is itself. So God's promise, God's commitment, God's faithfulness. In modern Hebrew, the word hesed means grace, and so that's why I say it's his covenant grace, and it's something that we can rely on. And then he says, I have made a covenant with my chosen in verse 3. It's very important here. It says, I have cut is the actual word in Hebrew. Karat berit. You cut a covenant in Hebrew because it has to do with there's sacrifice involved and there's blood involved. And so a berit is something that is cut. He says, I've cut a covenant with David, my chosen, and I have established his seed forever to build up his throne for all generations. And then there's a Selah moment, a pause for the music to increase, for us to reflect on what's happening. And then it goes on to, in verse 5, a praise of God for all he's done, a praise for his overall view of the creation. It says, the heavens are going to praise your wonders, Lord, and we're going to tell about your emunah, your faithfulness, your dependability among all the gatherings of the saints, because who can compare to you, God? There are nations around who claim to worship gods, but these are non-gods in comparison to you. There is no God like our God, it says, and God is greatly to be held in awe by his holy people, and he's the strong one. Lord, again, God, who is like you? Strong, mighty, power. And your faithfulness continues to those who surround you. And then it talks about some of the characteristics of God in creation. It says, you rule the raging sea. Now, when the scriptures talk about sea, particularly when the songs talk about the sea, they're often referring back to the waters of chaos before creation. And here it's saying that God, you overcame those waters of chaos, and you stilled them. You've broken Rahav in pieces. Now Rahav here, sometimes Rahav refers to a picture of Egypt, but here probably Rahav is also referring to an old legendary sea monster, a chaos monster that God has broken. He's defeated chaos itself, and he's scattered his enemies with a strong arm. It says, the heavens belong to you, the earth is yours, and everything that's in it. Remind us of Psalm 24 there, that everything that exists, all of creation is a result of God's mighty and strong act. He's created the mountains, he's created Tavor and Hermon, the two probably to the highest mountains in Israel, and he's pointing to this and saying, even the high mountains are the creation of your name. You have a mighty arm, you have a strong hand. And then the habitation of his throne is high, is great, and he is ruling over all things. So as we look today at this part of this psalm, we can rejoice in the fact that God's hesed, God's covenant obligation, God's covenant commitment is unlimited, it's unbreakable, it's unfailing. And no wonder that the constant song of Israel, the constant anthem of Israel was give thanks to the Lord, for he's good, for his hesed is unlimited, his hesed lasts forever. We can echo that today, particularly through what Jesus has done in pouring his grace out upon us through the cross and resurrection. Have a good day.